Welcome to Lowriders. I'm Zach Quinones, and today we are going to be doing a whiteboard workshop about character arc and character development and how the two are actually different, even though there's a lot of overlap. Yes, I do have a pimple, if you can see that. So sorry if that distracts you a little bit. But before I get into this, I want to give some updates. I'm still doing the studio videos, but obviously that takes a lot of planning with my cinematographer, setting up the studio because we use the studio a lot for like other things. So that is still coming. It just takes time. Just be patient. I know that when I post it on YouTube, I get comments or emails from people asking questions about some of the stuff I talk about. So I do know that there are some people out there that are actually benefiting from it. So they're not going to stop. Social media stuff, following social media accounts on TikTok, uh, Instagram. I might make a Twitter for lowriders. Things are super slow there. The social media stuff is not my focus. The focus is workshopping, getting the studio kind of more networked out. I've been doing a lot of like cold emails to other screenwriters, and currently I have two screenwriters that I'm working with in the studio on their screenwriting and on their projects that's helping them out. So that's 90% of my focus. So even though if you do follow on social media and it seems like it's like dead accounts, they're not, just don't have anything right now to really post. And as things start getting going and I have like more people coming through the studio to like work on their screenwriting, and I have another person that I'm doing online coaching for, as that kind of starts to build up, I will have more to update on there. Um, so just be patient. This is a long process. Uh, as far as the whiteboard stuff, finally took the time to buy a whiteboard. So I plan to kind of supplement the lack of studio videos with more whiteboard stuff, especially since I used to have a whiteboard and I used it a lot. So now that I have one again, definitely going to be using it a lot, and I'm going to take the time to make videos, whether they're 10 minutes, an hour long, put those up. They're very do it yourself. They don't need to be fancy. They don't need to be like highly produced like the studio videos. So it's going to be way easier. I can just record these on my phone like I'm doing right now. So with that said, let's get right into it. Character arc versus character development. Um, they're very similar, but there are distinct differences in between them. And I think it's important for new writers and even veteran writers to really understand that knowing the differences between the two, even though they're small, can make a huge difference in how you're writing your characters, specifically your main characters. So the first thing we're going to go over is character arc. Okay, so obviously we know what a character arc looks like. Right? Character starts here, goes into the arc, overcomes some stuff, and comes right back down to where they started. And not started, but returns to the plane in which they started from. So they're on the same plane. They've overcome a bunch of stuff, but ultimately they just had an arc, but they may not have actually developed, okay? So, a good example of this, Superman. Superman is always Superman at the beginning and at the end. He doesn't really change. Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible, James Bond, John Wick, they are the same person. Literally the same person. They haven't had any real actual development. The morals, principles, and skills that they had at the beginning are essentially still the primary skills, morals, and ideologies that they have at the end. They used those already developed skills and everything to overcome these obstacles and have this arc. They may have learned some new skills, but those new skills don't really change their identity. And I think that's one of the main things is they have to generally change in order for it to be character development. But character arcs are fine, as I said, like Superman, Ethan Hunt, John Wick, pretty much any kind of like superhero esque type of movie, you're gonna have that basic like character arc. And it's important to know because a lot of times people will say, "Oh, this character had a great arc," when they didn't really have an arc as much as they had a development. Or they say, "Oh, the character had a very great development," but they didn't really have a development. They had an arc, but they still ended up the same. So there was no real development. I know it sounds kind of convoluted, but it'll make sense more when I go into character development. And there's nothing wrong with either or. It's just understanding which one you're falling into in order to like write your character more effectively and efficiently. Okay? Now, with an arc, you can also have the inverse of it, where your character falls and returns. So, same thing. They get kind of knocked down and then they get brought back up, but they're still very much on the same plane. You understand? Like, this is the main word I want, same plane of ideology and identity. Okay, so these also might have had an effect, but a lot of times they are already developed. So the developed skills that they have were used to endure these obstacles that brought them down. One movie that pops into my head is like the movie Bleed for This with Miles Taylor, when he's a boxer. He's like a world. I don't know if he was a world champion boxer, but he was like a championship boxer, and he gets in a car wreck. Spoiler alert: loses his ability to box, and becomes essentially almost paralyzed. And with his already developed skills and identity and ideology, he's able to bring himself back up to his original status. So that's like a really good character arc. He doesn't actually change as a person per se. Like he's still very much the same person he was before. Obviously, there's like growth and all that, but there's not like a full on development where he's completely changed in one direction or the other. Again, I know it sounds like a little bit convoluted, but that's why we're going to get into character development next. Now, one thing I want you to notice is, you see how this is like a circle? Should remind you of the hero's journey. And the hero's journey, if you know that, and I can post a link and maybe like a little graphic here, it's very cyclical. It's very repetitive because in the hero's journey, the hero, even the first time a hero goes through the hero's journey, they go through it over and over again with every new adventure, and it's sort of like repetitive, and they just end up the hero every time. So it's like they're going through an arc, but there's not a development, and you'll see right now what I mean by that. Okay, so take it in, soak it in. Give you a minute. Drink my coffee. All right, character development is next. All right. So, character development. So you're thinking, okay, Zach, what's the difference? This is the difference. So I'm going to draw 2 lines here, right? And this is going to be, separate these right here. Don't worry about that squiggly line. So character development. Your character starts here, and they end up here. Okay? They literally have a development. They are not on the same plane that they were before. They had zero courage. Their ideology, all of that, literally enhances to where they gain courage. They switch their ideologies. And the reason why the planes are on parallel is because they're essentially still the same person. They've always inherently had these qualities, but they had to literally upgrade to a higher plane to order to achieve it. That's a character development. Now, obviously, you could say there are like arcs between this. That's why I kind of make it a squiggle line. But that's sort of the main distinction. Is there is a very different thing that happens to like they become a very different person by the end. This would be like Superman not being Superman anymore by the end of it. That's a character development. And him having to just completely change his whole ideology of when it comes to fighting crime and trying to like save people. That's like just one off the top of my head. But ultimately, that is the main thing: is the character does have to be underdeveloped. Like they can't already have these inherent skills developed and ideologies developed. They're almost like non-existent, so they have to be presented out. A really good classic literature example of this is from the Fairy Queen poetry poem about Red Cross the Red Knight. Red Cross the Red Knight, in the poem, he is a thief, he is a coward, he is a liar, and the poem starts off with him riding a horse, and he's in like battered knight armor. And what you come to find out is he stole the horse, and I believe he took the battle armor off of like dead soldiers and put it on himself so that he can appear like a knight that's been like full, involved in a lot of battles, and people would like leave him alone or be scared of him. That may be not entirely accurate because I haven't read that poem in forever, but that's the gist of it. Let's just go with that. But over time, he does want to become a respected knight, and as the poem goes, he gets put through certain tests, and as he passes the test, he gets closer to being a real knight, and he starts removing his ideologies of like connivery, I guess you can call it. He becomes brave. He becomes more honest. He starts making more virtuous decisions. And so as he does that, he sheds the old armor that he stole, and he starts gaining, we're being rewarded with like real armor, brand new armor. So by the end, he's a real knight. So started off not a knight and a thief, admirable, honorable. Now you have the opposite of character development, or not the opposite, sorry. You have the opposite of this, which is they start up high, and oh wow, ignore that. They will descend into something like that. Probably I'm gonna pick that up real quick. Probably the most easy example for me about that is Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight. Virtuous, meaningful politician that wants to save Gotham. He descends into Two Face. Becomes the exact opposite of that. But he also has the plane. The reason why we have the plane and they kind of like they're parallel, but they're also away, is because oftentimes they take the original ideologies and obviously they flip them, but they have to work together. So it's like they have to have a connection. In order for this to be existing, this had to have existed, and vice versa. So that's how they're connected. So that's sort of what you have to understand about character development and character arcs. Because a lot of times people don't realize they try to do both, and they wonder why there's something not quite hitting. There's a weird rhythm with the character, and I think this is also good for if you say, okay, I'm gonna have a character development. If somebody says, well, they don't really have an arc, it's like, yeah, because they're not. I'm not writing them to have a fucking arc. I'm writing them to have a development. Or if somebody says, oh, the character development seems kind of, they're the same person at the end, it's like, yeah, because it's an arc. Because they literally are just overcoming obstacles, but they're still the same person. They don't have to always change. And that's something every writer has to understand. Your characters don't always have to change. It matters about the goal of the character and the plot, the storyline, and the type of effect you want. So hopefully that is very helpful for you all. Well, I mean, I know it should be, but if there are any questions, you can always email us, which is primarily me. I do have another friend a couple friends that I do this with. But email, ask questions in the comments, hit me up on social media, and yeah, check us out on our website, lowriders.inc, INK, and sign up for our email list so you can get vlogs, workshops, online coaching more directly, and updates on that. So thank you, and yeah.